Imagine a river flowing endlessly through a vast forest. Its waters are clear, its course steady until a storm disrupts the calm. Debris, turbulence, and noise cloud the purity of the stream. Our minds too are often like that river, naturally clear but disturbed by the constant storms of distraction in our modern world. The question we must ask is, how do we return to clarity and stillness when the storms seem unrelenting? Let us begin by understanding the root of distraction. Each notification, each moment of multitasking pulls us away from our essence. But the external world is not the true source of this noise, it is our identification with the chatter of the mind. When we believe we are our thoughts, when we mistake the mental noise for who we are, we lose touch with the quiet observer within. This recognition is the first step to realize that you are not the thinker but the awareness behind the thoughts. From this awareness we move into the practice of presence. Presence is not something we achieve, it is something we remember. In this moment right now, pause. Take a deep breath in and release it slowly. Did you notice the gap, however brief, between the inhale and exhale? That space is where stillness lives. When we anchor ourselves in the breath, the sights and sounds of the now, we discover that the mind's chaos cannot survive in the present moment. But clarity and stillness require more than momentary practice, they demand alignment. When we align ourselves with a state of inner peace, we become less reactive to the world's chaos. Instead of being swept away by every disturbance, we transform into the calm eye of the storm. This alignment is not about controlling the outside world, it's about mastering our inner world. And as we do, our energy shifts, we vibrate at a frequency that naturally draws clarity into our lives. Finally, the key to sustaining this stillness lies in transcending the mind altogether. The mind, for all its brilliance, is often trapped in cycles of the past and future. But the heart, our deepest center, knows only the timeless now. When we live from this heart-centered awareness, stillness is no longer an experience we seek, but a state we embody. In this state, we don't just find clarity, we become clarity. The storms of distraction will not cease. The world will not suddenly grow quieter. But when we learn to navigate these storms from a place of stillness and presence, we find that the river of our mind clears naturally. And in that clarity we remember who we truly are, not the debris, not the turbulence, but the infinite stillness beneath it all. In a world overflowing with endless notifications, buzzing devices, and constant demands for attention, it's easy to blame external factors for our sense of overwhelm. But the true source of distraction lies much deeper. It begins within us, in the relationship we have with our own minds and the stories we tell ourselves about the world. Distraction is not just about losing focus, it's about losing connection to our core. At its essence, it is a byproduct of misalignment when our awareness becomes entangled in the ceaseless chatter of the mind. The human mind is a masterful tool capable of profound creativity and problem solving, but it is also deeply conditioned to seek stimulation and avoid stillness. This is because stillness to the mind can feel threatening. Without movement, without something to analyze, predict, or plan, the mind begins to lose its sense of control. It scrambles to fill the quiet with noise, and that noise becomes the distractions we experience. Think about this: distraction does not originate from the things around us, but from how we respond to them. A phone on its own has no power to distract, it is the meaning we give to its vibration or notification that pulls us in. Distraction occurs when we unconsciously allow our attention to be hijacked by external triggers or by the mind's internal narratives, often rooted in fear, lack, or the need to achieve something. It's not the world that overwhelms us. It's our attachment to the mental stories about the world that creates the chaos. This attachment stems from a deeper misunderstanding of our identity. For most of us, there's an unconscious belief that we are the mind. We identify with its thoughts, its judgments, and its concerns as though they define who we are. But have you ever paused to consider this? If you can observe your thoughts, then who is the one doing the observing? The simple act of noticing your mind's activity proves that you are not the thoughts themselves, but the awareness behind them. Distraction loses its grip the moment we step into this observer state, because it is the mind, not the true self, that thrives on distraction. To truly understand distraction, we must also recognize the role of emotional energy. Often, distraction is a mechanism we use to avoid uncomfortable feelings. When we feel restless, anxious, or uncertain, the mind seeks an escape. It convinces us that scrolling through our phones, binge-watching content, or jumping from one task to another will provide relief. And yet, these distractions only deepen the disconnection, leaving us feeling even more scattered and unfulfilled. The root of distraction is also linked to the mind's preoccupation with time. The mind constantly oscillates between reliving the past and rehearsing the future. It rarely dwells in the present moment, because the present moment is where stillness resides. And stillness, as profound as it is, can feel unfamiliar and uncomfortable to a mind conditioned for endless activity. This is why we often feel an almost compulsive need to stay busy, even when there's no real urgency. Busyness becomes a form of distraction, a way to avoid the discomfort of simply being. But here's the liberating truth: once we understand that distraction originates within us, we gain the power to change our relationship with it. Distraction is not something we need to fight or conquer, it's something we need to observe. Each time we notice ourselves being pulled into a moment of distraction, we are given an opportunity to pause and ask, what is my mind seeking right now? What am I trying to avoid? The simple inquiry can begin to unravel the patterns that keep us disconnected. The key to breaking free from the root of distraction lies in awareness. When we bring conscious attention to the present moment, we create a space where distraction cannot thrive. In that space, we rediscover our natural state of clarity and stillness, not by eliminating the distractions of the world, but by changing how we respond to them. And in doing so, we reconnect with the essence of who we truly are, not the noise, but the quiet, steady awareness beneath it all. Presence is the art of fully inhabiting the moment you are in, without judgment, resistance, or the pull of past and future narratives. It is deceptively simple in concept, but profoundly transformative in practice. In a world driven by speed, urgency, and constant stimulation, cultivating presence becomes an act of quiet rebellion, a way to reclaim your energy, focus, and peace. To understand presence, we must first recognize the mind's tendency to fragment our attention. The mind is rarely still, it jumps from thought to thought, much like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. It revisits past regrets, analyzes past conversations, and projects fears or fantasies onto the future. These mental patterns are so ingrained that we often fail to notice how rarely we inhabit the present moment. Presence is the antidote to this mental fragmentation. It invites us to pause, to return to the now, and to experience life as it unfolds in real time. Cultivating presence begins with awareness, and one of the simplest tools to anchor this awareness is the breath. The breath is a constant, unchanging rhythm in our lives, a bridge between the body and the mind. By bringing your attention to the inhale and exhale, you create a moment of stillness where the mind's chatter begins to quiet. Inhale deeply now and feel the air filling your lungs. Hold it for a moment and then exhale slowly. In that brief pause, were you thinking of your to-do list or your worries? Likely not. This is the power of breath awareness. It interrupts the mind's habitual patterns and draws you back to presence. Beyond the breath, cultivating presence requires a shift in how we perceive the moment. Presence does not mean ignoring the chaos of life or suppressing emotions. Rather, it means embracing what is without resistance. Often we are conditioned to label experiences as good or bad, to cling to pleasant sensations and avoid discomfort. Presence invites us to let go of these judgments and experience each moment fully. When you are present, so simple like sipping tea, come tea, it's the warmth of the cup in your hands, the rising with the steam. the taste of the first sip as it spreads across your tongue. These details, which often go unnoticed, come alive in presence. Practicing presence also means training your mind to focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking, while celebrated in modern culture, is a major barrier to presence. The mind can only truly focus on one task in any given moment. By choosing to give your full attention to what you are doing, whether it's listening to a friend, writing, or walking, you bring a depth of awareness that transforms even the most mundane activities into something meaningful. This focused attention is not only calming but also clarifying, as it allows you to connect with the essence of the moment rather than skimming its surface. Distractions will inevitably arise as you practice presence, and this is where compassion for yourself becomes essential. The goal is not to force yourself into perfect focus, but to gently return to the present each time you notice your attention drifting. Think of presence as a muscle that strengthens with use. Each time you bring yourself back to the now, whether through the breath, sensory awareness, or simply pausing to observe, you deepen your capacity for presence. A key aspect of presence is the recognition that it is not something external to achieve, but something already within you. Presence is your natural state, obscured only by the noise of the mind. As you cultivate presence, you begin to notice its effects ripple outward. Life slows down, not in pace but in perception. Clarity emerges where there was confusion, and moments that once felt mundane take on a richness and depth. In presence we find freedom, not from the challenges of life, but from the unnecessary suffering caused by overthinking, worrying, and resisting reality. When you are present, you are no longer living through the lens of the mind's stories. You are experiencing life directly as it is, and in that direct experience lies peace, clarity, and an ever-deepening connection to the truth of who you are. Inner alignment is the process of bringing the mind, body, and spirit into harmony with each other. It's about living in a state where your thoughts, emotions, and actions are consistent with your deepest values and intentions. When we are aligned with our true essence, we experience a profound sense of clarity, peace, and purpose. This alignment is not a destination to be reached, but an ongoing practice, a constant tuning of the inner compass that guides us toward a more centered and fulfilled life. At its core, inner alignment begins with self-awareness. The first step is to become conscious of the internal dissonance that often arises when we are out of alignment. We may feel tension, frustration, or unease when our thoughts conflict with our actions, or when we are living in a way that contradicts our deeper desires. For instance, we might think we want peace and stillness, but our actions, such as overworking, rushing, and busy, reflect the opposite. This disconnect between our intentions and behaviors creates inner conflict, which is often the root of anxiety and stress. The power of inner alignment lies in the awareness that we have the ability to bridge this gap. By taking the time to listen deeply to our inner voice, we begin to understand what is truly important to us. The key is to tune into the wisdom of the body and emotions, for they often know what the mind cannot articulate. When we feel tension in our body or a sense of discomfort, it is a signal that something is out of alignment. When we feel a sense of flow, ease, and peace, it is an indication that we are in alignment with our true selves. Once we become aware of the areas in our lives where we are out of alignment, we can take intentional steps to realign. This may involve shifting our thoughts, changing our behaviors, or letting go of attachments to outcomes. It is important to recognize that alignment is not about perfection, rather it is about consistently returning to a state of balance. We are all human, and we all stray from alignment from time to time. The key is to be kind to ourselves in those moments, to recognize the misalignment without judgment, and gently guide ourselves back to a state of inner harmony. A significant part of inner alignment is aligning with our values. When we live in accordance with our highest values, we experience greater fulfillment and a deeper sense of purpose. This requires clarity about what truly matters to us, whether it's love, creativity, freedom, growth, or service. Often, the external world pressures us to prioritize things that are not aligned with our core values, status, wealth, or approval. For example, when we make choices based on these external values, we begin to feel disconnected from our true selves. But when we choose to honor what is deeply meaningful to us, we feel a sense of congruence that can't be shaken by the circumstances around us. Inner alignment also involves a shift in how we respond to external circumstances. Life is full of uncertainty and challenges, but when we are aligned internally, we approach life from a place of centeredness rather than reaction. For example, if you are faced with a difficult situation, whether it's a challenging conversation, a setback at work, or a personal struggle, the aligned response is to meet it with clarity and calm rather than anxiety or fear. This response comes from a deep trust in your ability to navigate the world without being pulled off course by external turbulence. When we are aligned, we no longer need to control every outcome or manipulate situations to fit our desires. We trust that by being true to ourselves, we will find the path that best serves our growth and purpose. The power of inner alignment also extends to our energy. Our thoughts and emotions create an energetic field that influences not only our internal state, but also our external reality. When we are aligned, our energy is clear, focused, and purposeful. We become magnetic in a sense, not because we are trying to attract anything, but because we are radiating the authenticity of our being. This magnetic energy draws opportunities, people, and situations that resonate with our inner truth. Living in alignment also has a ripple effect on our relationships. When we are aligned within ourselves, we are better able to connect with others from a place of authenticity. Our interactions become less about what we can gain from others and more about mutual respect, love, and shared growth. In this state of alignment, we naturally attract relationships that nurture and support our highest potential. The power of inner alignment is transformative. It shifts the way we see ourselves, the world, and our place within it. When we live from this aligned space, life flows more effortlessly. We experience greater peace, clarity, and a profound sense of connection to our higher purpose. Inner alignment is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing practice of staying true to ourselves amidst the distractions and demands of the world. And the more we align with our true essence, the more we come to realize that we are not separate from the universe around us, but an integral part of its harmonious flow. Living beyond the mind is the practice of stepping out of the constant flow of thoughts and entering into a state of awareness that transcends mental activity. The mind, while an incredible tool for navigating the world, is often the source of much of our suffering. It generates endless chatter, judging, analyzing, predicting, and interpreting everything we experience. Yet beneath this ceaseless mental activity lies a deeper state of being, a space of stillness and clarity that is not bound by the limitations of thought. Most of us identify so closely with our thoughts that we forget there is something more. We think we are our thoughts, when in reality we are the awareness observing them. The mind, driven by past conditioning and future projections, often pulls us into its stories and judgments. We replay past events, worrying about things that have already happened, or we anticipate what might happen, often imagining worst-case scenarios. This endless cycle keeps us tethered to the past or future, disconnected from the present moment. Living beyond the mind is about breaking free from this identification and embracing the present as it is. The first step in living beyond the mind is to become aware of how much of our experience is dictated by the mind. It takes little more than a moment of observation to realize that our thoughts are not always relevant, nor are they necessarily true. When we identify with our thoughts, we lose the ability to distinguish between what is real and what is simply a mental creation. Much of our anxiety, fear, and dissatisfaction arise because we become trapped in the narrative the mind creates. But when we step back and witness our thoughts without attachment, we begin to see them for what they truly are, fleeting, impermanent phenomena. The next step in transcending the mind is to deepen our connection with the present moment. The mind is always in motion, but the present moment is still. It is in the present where true peace resides, where we are no longer dragged by the past or pulled by the future. When we learn to anchor ourselves in the now, the mind's constant chatter begins to fade into the background. This doesn't mean we eliminate thoughts entirely, rather we create space between ourselves and the thoughts. The thoughts may still arise, but they no longer define who we are or govern our responses. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate presence is through the body. The body is an anchor to the present moment. It doesn't dwell on the past or worry about the future. It simply exists in the now. When we become more attuned to our bodily sensations, whether through movement, breath, or stillness, we begin to experience life directly rather than through the filter of the mind. Practices such as mindful breathing, yoga, or simply walking in nature allow us to reconnect with the body and, in doing so, reconnect with the present. Living beyond the mind also involves embracing the space of silence. Silence is often seen as uncomfortable or unsettling because it contrasts with the constant activity of the mind. Yet silence is where true insight arises. It is in silence that we can hear the deeper wisdom of our being, a wisdom that is not clouded by the noise of thoughts. By creating moments of silence in our daily lives, whether through meditation, reflection, or simply being in nature, we open the door to this deeper level of awareness. Another key aspect of living beyond the mind is releasing the need for control. The mind thrives on control. It wants to predict, organize, and manage every outcome. But the truth is that much of life is beyond our control. When we let go of the need to control every aspect of our experience, we free ourselves from the anxiety and resistance that arise when things don't go according to plan. This doesn't mean we stop taking action or making decisions, but rather that we act from a place of clarity and intuition rather than fear or attachment to outcomes. As we move beyond the mind, we begin to tap into a deeper intelligence, an intelligence that is not bound by logic, analysis, or reasoning. This intelligence comes from a place of stillness, intuition, and heart-centered awareness. It is a knowing that arises not from the mind, but from the essence of our being. It is a wisdom that transcends the limitations of the ego and connects us to a greater understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Living beyond the mind doesn't mean rejecting the mind or its functions. The mind is a necessary tool for navigating the world. It helps us plan, make decisions, and interact with others. But when we identify solely with the mind, we become disconnected from our true nature. Living beyond the mind is about finding balance. It's about recognizing that you are not just your thoughts, but something much greater. You are the awareness in which thoughts arise, the consciousness that witnesses everything. In this space of awareness, the mind becomes a servant rather than a master. It is used when needed, but it no longer dictates your experience or your sense of self. As we live beyond the mind, we begin to experience life as it truly is, vibrant, full of possibility, and deeply interconnected. The mind may still arise, but it no longer defines us. We are free to experience the fullness of life, moment by moment, beyond the limitations of thought. In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, finding clarity and stillness is not only essential but transformative. The journey begins with understanding the root of distraction, recognizing that the chaos we feel is often a product of how we relate to our thoughts. By observing the mind and detaching from its endless noise, we can reconnect with the deeper stillness that lies within us. Cultivating presence allows us to anchor ourselves in the present moment, where clarity naturally arises and where the distractions of the world lose their grip. Inner alignment follows as we begin to align our thoughts, actions and energy with our deepest values, creating a flow of peace and purpose in our lives. Finally, living beyond the mind takes us to a place where we no longer identify with our thoughts, but instead rest in the awareness that observes them. This awareness is where true clarity and stillness reside. As we practice these principles, we realize that clarity is not something we chase or attain. It is a state of being that naturally unfolds when we free ourselves from the distractions of the mind and reconnect with the present. Stillness becomes not just a moment of respite, but a way of living, a state where we experience life with openness, presence, and peace, regardless of the noise around us. The more we cultivate these practices, the more we discover that the clarity and stillness we seek are already within us, waiting to be recognized. And when we do, we find that life flows with greater ease, purpose, and joy. Thank you.